So it's kind of up to you, Bridget, on when you want to start.
Yeah, so my clock says we still have another minute here. Maybe for those of you that have arrived, we closed yesterday's class with kind of talking about, I threw some questions out there for you to think about over the night about, you know, things that you heard that were resonating with you that you might want to try, times of day that you might feel like you could make some space to incorporate some self-care. I don't know, maybe even anything that you decided to try last night or today. I'd love to hear about those. So maybe while we're waiting for the rest of the group to log in here, maybe you want to type those into the Q&A or into the chat, and then we'll have those ready to go when we get started here. Also, I think that one of you had a question that you had asked yesterday that we missed somehow in the chat box. So I wanted to make sure that we went ahead and addressed that before we kept going. Somebody had asked about the names of the herb cards that I was talking about that I was using during my tea ceremonies. So this is the Herbal Healing deck, this one here. The one that I've been using most recently that was just recently gifted to me is this Herb Crafters Tarot. It's a really, really sweet one. The way that they have the plants grouped together and just the way that she writes and speaks about the plants just really resonate with me. I think, you know, we all are drawn to different cards for different reasons, but this one, maybe because it's new, but it feels like just, you know, I'm just resonating with her writing. It's a really sweet one. So that's the Herb Crafters Tarot. But I do that same kind of tea ceremony with the cards. Not always with the herb cards. I have other ones that are like I have some really nice animal spirit cards, and I have a women's empowerment deck. So you don't necessarily have to have an herb deck if you have some other kind, and you could just set your intention for your practice with your tea and the herbs that you choose, and then draw a card that somehow will reflect something to you about that intention as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an herb deck, but these two are great. So hopefully that answers the question for whoever had that yesterday. And then, like I said, if you guys want to start typing into either the Q&A or the chat, maybe anything from yesterday that you incorporated into your evening routine yesterday or that you've had a chance to work with today. I'd love to hear kind of how you're starting to incorporate this practice. Also, you know, what's coming through for you about times of day that you feel like you'll be able to make more space for some of these kind of practices, anything at all that's relative. You know, I hold a women's circle with actually 2 different women's circles right now. And in one of the circles, one of the women was sharing, I don't even remember exactly what our deepening practice was around at the time, but we were talking about some kind of a deepening practice, maybe some kind of a meditation. And the woman shared, you know, how doing the meditation the way that I had presented it wasn't really working for her, but that what she had started doing was that she was taking the practice and she was reading one of the questions, one of the reflection questions, and then she was kind of holding that intention and working through it while she was going on her daily run. And it just kind of shows the power of sharing in a group like this, how we can open up possibilities for others, things that maybe they hadn't considered. So that's why I'm encouraging kind of these sharing pieces as we go through, because sometimes somebody will come up with an idea that you just wouldn't have thought of that's ingenious, that could be really helpful for you. So if you're comfortable popping into the chat or the Q&A to kind of throw ideas out there, go ahead and do that now or at any point during the thing, and then I can read those out and share and comment on those, and maybe that'll inspire me or other people in the group to come up with new ideas of how to incorporate some of these practices for us. So let's see.
Bridget, I'm just going to pop in here real quick. So for everyone that's on, I just want to make sure that everybody knows how to change their view for the webinar. So up at the very top on the right-hand corner, you have the option of either gallery view or speaker view. So you can change that so that it's just Bridget, because I'm obviously blocking out my video and my muting myself. So I want you to be able to just see her. Otherwise, you have the two boxes side by side. All right, I'll mute myself again now. Okay, that was it.
Thank you. Okay, so the question that's popped up for us now here is putting lavender oil on the washcloth and letting it hang on the tap during the shower. Yep. Put my hand on my heart and said beautiful words and imagine them getting absorbed into all the water and all the cells of my body. Beautiful. Yeah, that's a really, really lovely, right? And I mean, I don't know how you felt about that, but probably really, really simple too. You know, the only thing that you changed about taking your morning shower was that you grabbed a little bit of lavender heading in there and that you just brought that intention and connected with that sacredness while taking your shower, right? Took just an ordinary everyday activity and made it truly an act of self-care. Perfect. That sounds great. Yeah. Anyone else want to share anything before we dive in? Yeah, it looks like something else popped up here. I'm going to start my morning after coffee routine doing daily morning loving self-talk and affirmations. Ooh, affirmations. We're going to talk about those a little bit later. So great. And prayer and intentions for the day. Perfect. Yeah. You know, again, that's kind of, I talked about, or have we talked about? No, we're going to talk about meditation a little bit today. Yes. I think maybe I said it when we were talking about yoga, but you know, for me, doing something, whatever that something is for you, that kind of sets the tone and sets my intention and my energy for the day early in the morning is so helpful. I remember, I think I told the story yesterday about when I was doing my sadhana for my Kundalini yoga practice and when that really got me into doing kind of a morning routine. And I remember one of my children, I think maybe it might have been my daughter, but I don't remember for sure. We were up in the morning and we were doing something and she just looked at me and she said, "You haven't done your sadhana today, have you, Mom?" She could really, really tell the difference just in like my energy and where I was at. You know, it's really kind of a calming, anchoring practice to bring something in first thing in the morning and to set your intention in that way. Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing. Beautiful. I think maybe we'll go ahead and just dive in. If you have any questions about anything that came up yesterday that you have been thinking about that you'd like to clarify, or you just like a little more information on, feel free to type that into the chat or the Q&A as well. And then as I get to the end of one of these sections, I'll pop in there and read questions and try to clarify anything that you might be wondering about. Okay, great. So I think we wrapped up yesterday talking about tea and all the kind of fun ways that you could make a tea ceremony or having your morning, afternoon, evening tea more of an intentional act of self-care. So now we're going to dive into breath work. And this is one of those topics that I could easily get lost in and spend the next 90 minutes talking about. So I'm going to try to be really specifically brief here, which means I'm not going to be able to give you all the information around breathwork and pranayama. It's a really fabulous, beautiful practice all on its own. But I can give you just kind of enough information here that perhaps would inspire you to spend a little more time looking into it. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you outside of the webinar or just kind of doing some research on your own to find some breathwork practices. When I talk about breathwork or pranayama, I'm talking about like exactly what it sounds like, you know, consciously breathing, essentially. So we have two kind of levels of our nervous system within our body. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is kind of that fight or flight survival piece of our nervous system that is activated during times of stress. And when it's activated, it is actively releasing cortisol in our system, which affects and disrupts our hormones and kind of a lot of other things, how it affects the body. So the parasympathetic is kind of the other side of our nervous system. And that's really our like rest, reset, and heal part of our nervous system. So obviously we're talking about, you know, self-care for healing and well-being. So what we want to do is we want to reside in the parasympathetic nervous system more often than not. The interesting things about these elements within our nervous system is that, the fight or flight we think of as like, a tiger is chasing us, or we encountered a bear in the woods or something. And so all of these processes happen in our body to help us survive, right? This fight, flight, or freeze kind of thing that comes in. The unfortunate thing is in our modern society, our nervous system cannot distinguish the difference between running into a bear in the woods and just having a really big pile of work on our counter, or running late for work, or just having like a lot of mental chatter going on. So unfortunately, in our modern society, the sympathetic fight or flight or freeze is activated way more often than really it should be for us to be healthy and to be functioning. And so the body doesn't get the time in this rest, reset, and heal that it truly needs to keep us well and to support us. So a really fabulous thing that we have built into our system is that we cannot reside and maintain and stay in this fight, flight, or freeze if we have a long, slow, deep breath. So it's almost like we have this emergency override system within our body that when we are in a difficult situation, or when we're enduring long periods of stress, as potentially you all might be feeling right now, we have this within ourselves without needing anything from the outside world, no tools. We have our breath, and by getting conscious with our breath and how we're breathing and how we're using our breath, we can override this fight or flight and keep ourselves in the rest, reset, and heal parasympathetic part of our nervous system more often, which will improve our health and our wellness. And it's really, really simple. There's lots of counted breath types of things that you can do. The other like really simple, easy one is to exhale longer than the inhale. So we're actually going to do a very short little one here, just because I want to give you a taste of the simplicity of this. If you've ever done yoga practice, often at the beginning of the class, sometimes throughout the class, or in the end during the relaxation, a yoga instructor will kind of lead you through some long, deep breath, an ujjayi breath or a belly breath, something to get you to connect with the breath and drop into that parasympathetic nervous system response where you're going to feel more relaxed. So let's just do a really short little breath here. I'm going to encourage everybody to settle into a position that feels comfortable, no specific position, no rules here. And then I'm going to have you go ahead and just gently close your eyes. I want you to just turn your awareness within. And what we're going to do is we're going to count the breath. And the breath that we're going to do here together, it's going to be a really simple 4-count inhale. We're going to hold or suspend the breath then for 2 counts. And then we'll release the breath for a count of 6. Hold the breath for 2, and then start the cycle again. I'm going to walk you through that a couple of rounds. And like I said, we're just going to do this for a few minutes here. I just want to give you a little taste of how you can flip that switch within you and drop back into the parasympathetic nervous system very, very easily. Okay, so here we go. So on your next inhale, I want you to start inhaling for a count of 4. Hold your breath now for a count of 2. And then slowly start exhaling for a count of 6. Hold or suspend the breath for a count of 2. And let's start inhaling. Count of 4. Suspend the breath for 2. Exhale, count of 6. Suspend the breath for 2. Slowly inhale to the count of 4. Suspend the breath for 2. Exhale for the count of 6. Suspend the breath for 2. And then continue the cycle for a few moments here on your own. Go ahead and complete the cycle that you're currently on. Keep your eyes gently closed and just notice how you're feeling. Notice how you're feeling physically, how the energy in or around your body feels different. Beautiful. When you're ready, you can go ahead and slowly blink your eyes open and come on back to the group. So I'm not sure exactly how you are feeling on the other side of the computer screen in your house. For me, I've been practicing and doing breath work and pranayama for many years. And so even just a couple of cycles of the breath, and I can really, really feel the difference. And most of my clients that I work with, even early on, kind of report the same thing. Being able to take us out of that fight or flight response and into that quieter, calmer, rest, renew, and heal. So even just that very simple 4-2-6-2 is what we would call that breath. Can be a tool that you can use at any time of the day, at your house, at work. I wouldn't recommend doing it while you're driving, although just deepened, long, deep breath while you're driving works too. So play around with that a little bit. See if that might be a tool for self-care, that just when you notice that you're kind of starting to spin, or when you're not in that place of mindfulness and you're just rushing from one thing to another, trying to get things done, you can just take that sacred pause and connect with the breath in that way. And as I said, we have the modern age of technology too, that if that's something that's really resonating with you, if you just in those short breaths really felt that shift in your body, and that's something that you feel like you'd like to learn more about, there's some really great books, resources online, and I'd be happy to also do a little more coaching or share just a little bit more information about how and why the breath works so dramatically for you. Okay, all right. Oh, and I was going to mention too, if it's something that you would like to try, but you're not super certain about, other breaths you might try, I recently downloaded a couple of apps that are specific to breath work. I'm trying to think if I can remember the names of them. State is one of them. And I'm pretty sure that State is the one that there's kind of a little circle. I actually saw this circulating around Facebook kind of a lot not too long ago. And there's a little circle and it expands while you're inhaling, and then it stays there while you're holding, and then it starts to kind of close with the exhale, so that you can just sort of breathe along with the different breath patterns that they give you. And they're always really short, like 2 minutes. You just take a break and do that. The other one is called Beautiful, like beautiful, but it's beautiful. And it's also a really nice one. I'm pretty sure it's that one. The thing I like about that one too is that they have different breaths for different kinds of energy that you're trying to bring in. They have a calming breath, but then they also have like an energizing breath, and they have a grounding breath, and it's kind of always changing what they're offering when you log in. And I'm not sure which one of them it is. It even had you do a little like test in the beginning to see like what your typical inhale and exhale were, so that they could start you from there, as opposed to giving you something with too long of a breath that you just really couldn't maintain and stay in the moment. So those are a couple of tools, positive ways that we can use technology to support our self-care. So check those out if you're interested. All right, so let's go ahead and transition now into meditation. And like I had talked about yesterday with yoga, I think this is also an area where people have maybe had, just a little bit of interface with meditation, or they've tried it and they had a really hard time calming their mind or sitting still, and they think, it's just not for me. Well, I just want you to know that there are thousands and thousands of different types of meditation. And if this is something that you're interested in playing around with, I would really encourage you to just explore a little bit more until you find one that's right for you. I mean, they have guided meditations, they have silent meditations, they have all different kinds of and styles of guided and silent meditations. One of the practices that I really love is called breath walk, which is actually a meditation that you do while you're walking or while you're engaged in other activities. You can do meditations where you have some kind of a mantra that you work with, or some other kind of visualization, something that you can keep returning to if your mind starts to wander. Deepak Chopra does a lot of really lovely free, there's lots of, obviously, access to lots of things out there, especially right now during these times. Kind of the silver lining of that is that so many people have taken their programs online, and a lot of people are offering stuff for free right now. But the thing that I like about Deepak Chopra's programs, especially for people who are beginners to meditation, is that he'll do kind of like a 21-day thing. He does some kind of a theme around it. He talks a little bit in the beginning about the theme. I think the whole recording is like 18 minutes or something. And so only like maybe 10 minutes are actual meditation. So if you're new to the practice of meditation, you feel like you've had a hard time in the past really staying focused or staying centered, his are fairly short, and he does also always give a mantra, something that you can work with to kind of keep coming back to your center when your mind starts wandering or thinking about the grocery list or what you need to cook for dinner. I find that having a mantra to work with within the meditation can be really helpful, especially in the beginning. Let's think about this. What else do I want to say about meditation? Really, truly, like I had said, kind of with the tea ceremony as well, I like to think of it, regardless of what type or style of meditation you look at, that really it's just an opportunity to slow down, to get still, and to connect. I once had a meditation teacher kind of break all of the meditation information that I had ever received in my life. They told me, I wrote this down, so meditation is the unconditional embracing of the present moment. That's it. That's it. Like no rules, no right way, wrong way to do it. It's just the unconditional embracing of the present moment, about making the time and space to be present with whatever is happening in the moment, including, or not limited to, like the noise going on in your house. I had an experience today. I was teaching a yoga class here from the house, and the delivery guy came and brought a delivery. They left it outside the front door. My dog went bonkers because there was someone outside the door and I was home alone. He feels it's his duty to protect the household. So in the course of a yoga class, my dog was barking for, I don't know, it seemed like an eternity, but it was probably only maybe like 4-ish minutes. And, I really had to think to myself that I was very thankful for my meditation practice that I had, because I was able to stay focused and present on my mat teaching while complete chaos was going on around me. And for me, that's really kind of the key to meditation, is being able to train the mind and to train your focus and train your awareness to stay rooted in the present moment in spite of what kind of chaos might be circling around you. So If you haven't explored it, or even if you have and you felt like maybe not for me, I'd like to just give you a little push in the direction of perhaps just investigating it again. If it doesn't feel like it's the right tool for you, please listen to that. But maybe just investigating it again and seeing if maybe another style, or maybe shortening the length of time from, I remember the first time that I started playing around with meditation. I was doing a very strict meditation practice with a group in my college. And it was an hour of sitting straight spine without moving. There was no guided or visualization. There was no music. It was, and it was really, really hard to keep my mind focused, And I remember feeling like I was kind of failing at it. I couldn't sit there and have a blank mind, which is what I thought I was supposed to be trying to achieve. So I think that the ways that meditation are being presented, and with all the different styles out there now, if you've had a negative experience or just one that, you felt like it wasn't working for you, maybe try it out again. Just see if maybe now is the time that you can find one that works for you. All right. So, speaking of all the different possible forms of meditation out there, one of the sweet things that I feel like has come out in the last, maybe 3 or 4 years is the adult coloring books. So if you haven't explored this and you have a little artistic creative side, or even if you don't and it's something that you'd like to explore, this is what I'd encourage. Again, they're not super expensive, and I can spend a really long time just sitting and coloring and just staying present in the moment with a creative process. I can make a really lovely self-care ceremony out of it for myself by brewing a cup of tea first and maybe putting on some meditation music and just coloring, right? Super simple. And yet that slowing down and showing up for ourselves can really and truly be an act of self-care. Okay, I'm going to probably challenge you a little bit with this next one again. I recommend this to people really frequently in my practice, and often hear, I don't know about that one. And it's journaling. And if you're already doing a journaling practice, awesome. I'd encourage you to stay with it. I feel like journaling is one of those that can really be super liberating and really healing. I also find that a lot of people, and I will include myself in this, have stories from their past, even if they didn't happen to them, stories from their past of something that happened to one of their friends when they were in middle school, or maybe even just saw it on a movie, like a mom reading a kid's journal and then getting in trouble, or knowing all of their secrets, a little brother getting into, his big sister's journal. So I think a lot of us have these kind of stories about journaling and being vulnerable and putting our deepest fears or our deepest thoughts or our truths on paper in that way. It can definitely feel quite vulnerable. So I'd invite you, if that's something that you're coming up against, is to maybe just investigate if that story that you have running for you is actually really true for you in your life right now. And if there's a way that you can find to lean into this practice and step out of that story, okay? Yeah. So, just the act of sitting down and writing, it slows the brain down and it gives us the opportunity to kind of get to the heart or the root of things that we're working through. When we're kind of processing things in our mind, the way that it works, we're kind of running things on a loop. I'm sure you've all experienced that, where you start to feel like you're just spinning something on a loop in your head. Writing things down on paper, it creates a linear line to it, and it can start to take you deeper into the thoughts and feelings, sometimes accessing thoughts and feelings you weren't even realizing that you were having, that are kind of running underneath the storyline. That's why this can be so healing. It can really bring things into your awareness that you weren't even aware of, and often really help you resolve things kind of by being your own sounding board almost. Another thing that I would invite that we'll talk about a little bit later in a different context is that if really truly that story that you have running about it not being safe to write your deepest thoughts and feelings down on paper, what about writing them and then burning them, tearing them up, throwing them away? You know, it's the act of writing them. It's the act of going through the process, not necessarily that you have to keep a journal, right? So what if you wrote it down on paper and then destroyed or got rid of the paper in some creative way? That would be another way to kind of work around that. You know, and I feel like that in itself can be just a really beautiful practice. But again, like, how can you enhance that to make a really beautiful self-care practice out of it in itself? You know, I personally do a journaling practice pretty regularly where I do gratitude journaling in the evenings before I go to bed. And we'll talk more about my kind of evening self-care practice. That's when I do a lot of my self-care. But it doesn't have to be in the evening that you do your journaling. I find that there's really different energies, actually, from journaling in the morning and journaling in the evening. I find evening journaling to be kind of very, my mind is in a very reflective kind of place, whereas in the mornings, I feel like my brain is much more active and almost like in a to-do list, or let's address these things. So it's a really different energy. So maybe play around with which one you're wanting to call more into your life, and then set up your practice in that way. But let's say you were going to do it in the evening. You know, how else could you also make a cup of evening kind of bedtime relaxation tea? You could light a candle. You could just have a really beautiful journal that maybe you decorated with things that inspire you. I always like to have a special pen that I use just for journaling. Things that just make it feel very sacred and elevated. Again, that you're really prioritizing yourself in this time for yourself. Okay, all right. Trying to stay on my list here because I've got lots of things to cover, and I feel like maybe I wasn't super great about time management yesterday. Kind of get wrapped up in the practices and start wandering with storytelling. So somebody had mentioned earlier, whenever I reached out about questions and was talking about doing kind of some like prayers and affirmations during the beginning of the day, I find that journaling and affirmations is a really beautiful practice to bring together. You can do this in lots of different ways. I do a practice called a 2211, where you write an affirmation for yourself 22 times, and you do that for 11 days straight. And, you know, it's about writing the affirmation and that process of writing it down and integrating that into your energetic field. It's also about the practice of really listening to and becoming aware of all of the inner voices and the inner critics that will come up during the course of writing something 22 times for 11 days, and bringing those into your field of awareness. You know, the things that aren't in our field of awareness still very much affect us and kind of cloud our perception of the world around us. So not only is this a really beautiful way to journal, to work through things, or to use a positive affirmation, it's also a really lovely practice to bring things into our field of awareness so that we can start making more conscious choices around them and how they're affecting our day-to-day life. And then yesterday I talked about the kind of mirror gazing that you could do for yourself. That's another really beautiful marriage, to bring in this mirror gazing practice with affirmations. So you would be gazing at yourself in the mirror and then repeating some kind of a positive affirmation, something that really resonates with you. You know, I think yesterday I presented kind of the I am loved idea, or I am beautiful, or, I am happy, healthy, and well. I have gifts that I can bring and offer to this life. I am enough. You know, whatever it is for you, those energies that you're working with, that you want to affirm in your daily life. And you can do that in a mirror or with the 2211 or other process in your journal. If that's something that's kind of resonating with you, this idea of maybe marrying the mirroring with the affirmation work, there's a book out there. I believe the author is Louise Hay, and I'm not sure that I'm going to get the title right. It's called Mirror Work, I think. And it's 21 days of affirmations that you do and repeat in the mirror with the affirmations that she's written. And the beginning of the book talks a little bit about the power of the mirror gazing, and it talks a little bit about the power of affirmations. And then she kind of weaves together this really beautiful, 21 days of practice that you can do working with those affirmations. So if that's something that's resonating with you, you might be interested in investigating and trying to find that book by Louise Hay. Okay, great. So just want to touch base here again. We talked yesterday about how saying no in itself is an act of self-love. Creating boundaries, asking for what you need, is an act of self-love, as is taking up space, giving yourself permission to take up space. And I mention that now here at this juncture because the next thing I want to talk about is about creating an altar or creating a sanctuary or creating sacred space for yourself in some way. So we'll talk about it first in the context of an altar. An altar can look and be like anything that you want it to be. It's a shelf in some part of your house. It's a corner of some part of your house. For me, in my current home, I was lucky enough that we have a bay window up in our bedroom, and I have embraced and laid claim to that bay window and created a really lovely altar for myself in that space. Certainly I have not always had that kind of space that I could take up in quite that way. At one point I had a little mini altar in a little antique like cigar box that I just kept some really beautiful stones and some white sage. I always kind of like to keep feathers that I've found. I tend to bring things back from sacred sites or from places where I just really felt connected to the earth and add those. What else do I currently have on my altar? I have a really pretty little altar cloth that I brought back from Peru that's kind of some sacred weavings. I have gemstones. I think I kind of mentioned feathers. Pictures of loved ones or pictures of yourself. I have a picture of myself, I don't know how old I would say I am, maybe like 5 or 6 years old, that just kind of represents for me kind of my essence and kind of that innocence of youth. I keep that on my altar. Like inspiring quotes, I often will have a quote, or if I'm working with cards at the time, sometimes I'll draw a card that just feels really resonant. It's like exactly the message I need at that time. And so sometimes I'll keep that card on my altar for maybe like a week before I draw another card. During the summer, I have lots of flower kind of gardens and stuff here. I'll cut a couple flowers and set them up on a little vase. I'll keep, books, inspiring books, my cards I'm working with, but it's your altar. Anything that inspires you can go on your altar or your sanctuary, or maybe even just creating like a little nook in some part of your house that's your favorite chair, or a place at the table where you really like to sit and gaze out at nature. Just putting together maybe a little bag of gemstones and things. The thing with the altar and kind of the purpose of the altar is that when you're returning to a space regularly, to make time for self-care, to ground and to be with yourself, I find it starts to kind of create an energy of its own. The best thing I can liken this to, because I'm a massage therapist, is how often people who get regular or even semi-regular massage work, they'll come in, they'll get on the massage table, and then you come back into the room to start their massage and they're like, I already feel more relaxed. right? All they've done is walk in the room and lay down on the table. But there's something in the body that remembers the last time they were on the massage table, or the time before that, or all the times that they've ever gotten a massage before. And it's almost like a sensory thing that happens, that the body automatically takes like a big sigh. And that's what an altar is for me. It's a place where we can go and come back to our center, ground, connect, come back to our truest essence of ourself, kind of let everything else that maybe has been happening since we were last at our altar fall away, and then move forward again with intention. I will say that there are days, and there have definitely been days recently, where I've just had to stop and just sit down in front of my altar and take a couple of deep breaths in the middle of the day. And it's amazing how it helps me reset. It really does. It truly helps me reset. So if this isn't something that you've ever claimed space for or taken the time to create, I'd encourage you, as an act of self-care, to maybe play around with this concept. It doesn't have to look like mine. It can look like anything at all that resonates with you. Certainly the first altar that I created for myself wasn't as elaborate. Like I said, I had just a few things in a little cigar antique box for a while. There's no reason it can't be portable. In my car, I actually keep like just a little zipper pouch that's a piece that I brought back from somewhere. It has a little bit of sage and a couple of stones, you know, just a collection of things that help remind you to come back to center. The other really kind of bonus added benefit of having an altar within your home is that it reminds me to do my self-care practices. You know, it's right next to my bed. I see it first thing in the morning. I see it when I go upstairs to get dressed. I see it when I make the bed. I see it if I haven't gotten to my practices before that. I see it on my way to bed. So having something like that in your home, even if it's, you know, just a quote that's sitting out somewhere that reminds you to take that time and to make that space for yourself, can be really helpful when you're trying to establish a new pattern or a new practice for yourself. Okay, great. Anything else there? No, I don't think so. Except that maybe, you know, just thinking outside the box too with this idea of altar or sanctuary. You know, we're starting, the sun was out today. It was an absolutely gorgeous day today. I went out and went on like a 20-minute walk as an act of self-care for myself today. Stepped away from some classes that I'm taking and just got myself outside to be in nature. We'll talk about nature as an act of self-care here a little bit more. But what about creating a space outside, you know, a hammock, or even just a chair in a spot outside that is a place that you go to ground and center. In my garden, I actually have kind of a little, I call it an altar stone. It's just a flat stone that I picked up that I kind of liked the look and the feel of. But I've planted sweetgrass around it, and then I usually put, you know, a little pot with something that's flowering. And there are days that I will come home from work and head straight to the garden. I don't even come into the house to put my bag down. And I'll head straight to the garden and I'll just sit down in front of that stone there. And it's a nice way to release and let go of anything that I might be carrying, anything about how my day maybe didn't go exactly as planned, and release all of those things, come back to center before I even enter into the house. Some of you might be familiar with a practice called a worry basket. And it's a sweet practice. I don't have kind of a place by my front door to have space for this in my current home, but I've definitely done it in the past. But the worry basket idea is that when you come home or you enter your home, you leave all of your worries from the day there so that you can show up in your totality there in your household by yourself or with your people, and just kind of let those worries be put aside for the moment. I've heard of people that have worry trees, you know, things that they stop on the way in and they gift their, or ask the tree to receive their worries before they go into the house. But it's a tool to recenter and reset So, whatever that ends up looking like for you, whether it's a sweet little spot in your house, something outside in nature, in your garden, a tree, a stone that's sitting by the front steps, whatever that might look like for you, whatever resonates with you, just a way to kind of bring some perspective in, recenter, and call that sacredness in, that mindfulness. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So maybe let's pause here a little bit and let's just kind of check in how everybody is doing. This is a class that I usually teach in person, and it's usually much more interactive, where we're sharing ideas. So as much as we can, I'm trying to pull a little bit of that interaction and that feel into the webinar as well. So how about, since we've been, here for, 45 minutes, so we're halfway through our time for today. Any practices today or ideas that have been sparked in you of things that you might try to integrate either on a regular kind of daily basis, or something that might be a practice that you would put together for, a Sunday or a Saturday when you have a little more spaciousness that you might want to try? Anything from today that's resonating or has reminded you of a practice you did in the past, or has sparked an idea for some kind of a practice, or how you might alter a current practice that you're doing that you might want to bring into your self-care practice that you want to share with us. So just type that into the chat or into the Q&A, and then we can kind of share those ideas, maybe help spark some ideas or ways to integrate things for other people. I'll just give everybody a minute here to pop into one of those areas and do that. Have a little sip of tea. That's my self-care. My couple of seconds of self-care while you're typing. All right. Well, nothing's popping up in the boxes, so I think maybe I will just...
Bridget, it looks like we have one comment here in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for bringing my awareness to that, because it didn't show up on the little thing. So gratefulness journaling before bed. Yeah, I'm telling you, I absolutely love this practice. And, it doesn't have to take much time at all. I usually, sometimes I get carried away. Sometimes I do, and I'll write for a long time. But sometimes it's just 5 things that I'm grateful for. Just 5 things that I'm grateful for. And I can usually do that pretty quickly. We'll talk about kind of all the things that I integrate in the evenings. That's when I do this one, but it's a great practice for any time of the day. I think somebody had talked about kind of setting prayers and intentions early in the day, dropping into that heart of gratitude and bringing in that gratitude early in the day also would be really beautiful. And I'm sure would really change and set the vibration for how you navigate the rest of your day. So another one that's popped up here, I love the idea of the worry basket. Had never heard of that before. Yeah, it's, I apologize that I'm not remembering exactly which Indigenous peoples that practice comes from, but there's lots of different versions of it. Like I said, I think maybe there was a sweet little thing that went around Facebook a couple of years ago about, he didn't call it a worry tree specifically, but that was kind of the feel of it, that, when the gentleman came home each day, he stopped and communicated with a tree in his front yard and just really told his worries and his concerns and shared that with the tree, kind of that process of like sharing it in your journal, like moving the energetics of that out of your body, bringing you back to center, and then he would enter his home. So yeah, whatever that looks like for you. Like I said, I've got a stone out in the garden amongst my sweetgrass. Sweetgrass is kind of known to be used to remember to call the sweetness back into your life. So there's something really great about releasing, any worries or troubles or things that have come up during the day to the stone, and then resetting and remembering to call the sweetness of life, remembering that gratitude, coming back to that as well. Yeah, the positive affirmations with the eye gazing, somebody else put in here. Yeah. You know, the eye gazing itself, as I talked about yesterday, is really a powerful practice all on its own. But then there's these other ways to play around with bringing the affirmations in with that, or pairing the affirmations with the journaling that can, just kind of start to create and weave your own self-care practice. Okay, great. All right, so let's go ahead and maybe dive into this next section here. I want to make sure that I can get to everything before we close up today. So here I just want to talk a little bit more about other ways that we can bring this idea of self-care into everyday, ordinary things we're doing most days of the week. So I don't know about all of you, and right now we're all kind of in a weird time too, right? So maybe what's happening for you right now isn't a good reflection of what happens to you on a regular basis. But for me, when I'm going out into the world and teaching yoga and seeing clients, I drive to Lutsen, depending on the time of year, anywhere between 2 and 5 times a week. So that's a half hour there and a half hour back. That is an hour of self-care that I could do if I'm being creative. So this is one of those areas that I've kind of tried to knit in some self-care in my daily commute. So, certainly be careful. You don't want to do anything, any kind of deep meditation or anything that would take you out of being fully present while you're driving. But there are things that you can do, instead of turning on the news or, whatever, maybe be very conscious and very mindful about the vibration that you want to meet when you're driving. I listen to a lot of mantra music, but also, there's just relaxing nature sounds. There's, all kinds of music that works for you. There are some people here in town that do like a women's music hour. So maybe putting together a playlist of just really inspiring female vocals is what you want to do. Maybe it's more specific mantra kind of stuff, or maybe it's not music at all. Maybe you can use that half hour, whatever your commute might look like. Maybe it's only 20 minutes, but hey, there's 20 minutes of gained self-care that you can do. And maybe it's listening to an inspirational book on audio, something that's very uplifting. Maybe it's listening to a podcast. One of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, just came out with a great podcast, but wow, is there a lot of great stuff out there. I listen to podcasts on Herbalist. I listen to podcast on, kind of psychology sort of stuff. I listen to, just different people that I find inspirational. So there's another way that, instead of just kind of mindlessly getting in your car, and be intentional about, what is the space that I want to create and what is the energy that I want to surround myself with for this period of time. Other things that I do is I kind of call it maybe a traveling sanctuary or traveling altar in my car as well. I keep sage and feathers and stones and quotes, all of those things in my car as well. So, maybe you're not really finding a place within your home that you feel like you can set up an altar for yourself. Set it up in your car. Let your car be a place that you really cultivate the energy of nurturing in. They even have these little car diffusers that you can use essential oils in. Be careful, it can get really overwhelming in your car really quickly. But they have these great little car diffusers. They have ones that you can just like clip onto. And I'm not talking about the scented ones that you buy that are like pre-scented, but they have these great ones that just kind of clip on and that you can put your own essential oils on the vents in your car. I've also seen ones that you plug into the lighter, like the lighter adapter thing, and they're actually kind of blowing and heating and really like diffusing and moving the essential oils around the space. So again, you could bring in kind of the stuff that we talked about from essential oils and draw that in and get really intentional about the commute. You could buy yourself a really lovely travel mug. I got this one locally and I absolutely love it. Hannah Palm Lakey makes these really sweet travel mugs. But make yourself a really lovely intentional cup of tea and take that with you, and then start to turn your commute, your what used to just be getting from point A to point B, into 5, 10, 20, maybe a full hour of very intentional self-care. Yeah. All right. What else do we have here? So what other areas of our life can we kind of follow that same patterning through? How can we bring that into our workplace, for example? We spend a huge portion of our day, most of us, at work, at our work environment, outside of our home. So what are these elements that we've talked about along the way? How could you potentially incorporate those into your workspace? And I know that all of us work maybe in really different environments, and it's, some things are maybe okay and others, not so much. I'm lucky enough to be self-employed and work in my own space. So if I want to burn sage in my space or put on mantra music, I can do all of those things. That's probably not the case for all of you, but hey, they have smokeless smudge sprays now with sage and stuff that you can use, kind of like we talked about the aromatherapy body mist. You can use essential oils in that way and just mist the space or mist yourself lightly. How about an altar in a drawer? What about dedicating the top drawer of your desk at work to keeping stones or little quotes or things that you feel really ground and center you? Maybe it's, putting a little quote up on a bulletin board, or, on a Post-it note, even on your computer that's got your affirmation that you're working with for the day, something like that. Maybe it's about not so much at work, at your desk. Maybe it's about your lunch break, and maybe it's about getting a little more intentional there. Maybe it's about creating a self-care ritual around your lunch itself, right? Feeding ourselves is how we nourish ourselves. And in our society of fast food and working through our lunch break, returning phone calls, running errands, again, right? What we don't do here can be as important as what we choose to do. I have to say, I was really guilty of trying to cram as much things on my to-do list into my lunch break as possible there for a while. And I can't tell you how different it feels and how much more nurturing it is to not let my to-do list be an option for the half hour that I have for my lunch. I use that time to be very dedicated to nourishing myself, whether that's through food or nourishing myself by going outside and enjoying the sun, taking a little walk. Sometimes I just go and I just sit outside of my space and breathe the fresh air. Again, the same things we talked about in the car could also come into play here. You could put on a podcast and listen to that while you're enjoying your meal, or put on some of that mantra or music that inspires you, whatever that looks like, while you're enjoying your meal. Maybe it's about getting a dedicated, really sweet, really lovely lunch bag that you take your lunch in, or buying yourself one of those metal, or I've seen even some glass ones. I'm not good with glass. I tend to break them. So metal is better for me. But, instead of throwing your food in plastic bags or in a plastic Tupperware, having something really beautiful, intentional, nurturing that you carry your lunch in, right? This element of food that you're going to nourish yourself with. Yeah. Just getting intentional about your choices around that too. And, we haven't even begun to talk about how food in itself can be a form of self-care. This is just talking about, how you do it. Instead of using a plastic fork or silverware, buy yourself, a little dedicated bamboo set that you take with you, or just bring some silverware from home and use some real silverware. Maybe even fold up a really lovely patterned cloth napkin. There's lots and lots of ways that you can take this idea of consuming out of necessity and making it a break, a pause, a way of getting clear and taking care of yourself and really nourishing yourself with intention over your lunch break. What else do we have over here around that? I think that's that's maybe it around kind of the work things, although I'm sure that you could come up with lots of other creative ideas that that I'm not thinking of, that would work in your own workspace, because I know that does look really different for all of us. But what about when you get done with work, right? The running errands, the doing the to-do list, the going to the grocery store. How could you set yourself up there that even going through the act of doing things on your to-do list can get more intentional, and can uplift you and raise your vibration? So I think the biggest one for me is about just flipping my perspective on that this is something that I need to get through to do the next thing that I want to do, right? What if you let yourself not be in a rush? What if you take the time to stop and talk to, when we can go back to the days of slowly strolling through the co-op aisles, stopping to say hello to our neighbors. I kind of miss that. I mean, the way that our grocery stores are set up right now is so great. I mean, they stepped forward and that they've done that. And I feel like their packaging and choosing our groceries is a lot of love. But connecting with friends and neighbors in that way, and slowing down, and not, rushing down the aisles to get the next thing, to get home, to do the next thing, to do the next thing, just flipping that perspective for myself and letting that thing that I'm doing in the present moment be what I'm doing, not the thing that I need to get through doing to do the next thing I want to do. Just letting ourselves slow down and be in the moment a little bit more and really enjoy it. Have a lot of gratitude around it. The other thing that has really shifted the energy around things that I find that are my to-do list, like grocery shopping or going to the post office, is just really cultivating kindness. I don't know if any of you live kind of in my neck of the woods. I live out County Road 7, but there is an older gentleman, BJ, and he walks his dog a couple of times a day. And every single person that walks or drives by him, every single person, for years and years and years and years, he's done this. He waves at them. He waves at them. Every single car that goes by. And I have felt so inspired by him. It makes my day. It makes my day to be driving into town when he happens to be on his walk. I get so excited to wave back at him. What if we just moved through even our to-do list with a little bit more gratitude in our hearts, wanting to share a little more kindness and giving ourselves permission to slow down and enjoy the moment, right? Stop and smell the roses, they say, which I also do. The great little rose garden that's just around the corner from my space. Anytime I go out to do an afternoon walk, I stop and I pause and I smell one of the 40 different colors and varieties of roses that are there. And, it makes a huge difference that making phone calls or scratching things off your to-do list while you're cramming food in your mouth out of a plastic to-go thing with a plastic fork versus slowing down, feeling what you need. Maybe you need to really get outside that day. Maybe you need to sit down and just be quiet. Maybe you want to put on some meditative music and just sit and just be. So, that's what I would invite too. Yes, routines are really helpful and can be super beneficial and are very soothing to the nervous system. But what about, instead of just doing something because that's what you always do, or because that's what you typically do after work or at lunch, what if you took that sacred pause at the beginning of your lunchtime or at the end of your day and felt into how you're doing? How am I? What do I need? How can I show up for myself in this moment to support myself, to come more into balance and to align with myself? Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Here we go. So how's everybody doing? You guys still with me? I know, I feel like I'm talking really fast today, just really trying to cram it all in. I want to be sure to share all of these goodies with you guys so that you have lots of things to work with, because I really want you to embrace and integrate this idea of self-care into your daily life. So now that we've presented lots of ideas and we've kind of talked about this flow of the day here, let's reflect on your day. what a typical day looks like now, maybe, and maybe what a typical day looked like for you a couple months ago, or what you think it might look like for you a couple months from now. And how could you integrate more of these ideas into your life? When or where could you bring some of these ideas in? Now that we've talked about things that you can do in the morning, we're going to talk a little bit more about things you could do at night. Maybe ways that you could structure your lunch break, just that, whether you're at home or if you're still working out in the world, that time that you've allotted for yourself for lunch, how could you navigate that just a little bit differently so that instead of it feeling like something that you do at noon that involves food, that it becomes an act of self-care? You can go ahead and type that again into the chat or into the Q&A section. And then maybe while you're typing, since we're talking about lunchtime kind of stuff, I'm going to present some other ideas, maybe around like the dinner element while you're typing, and then I'll pop into the questions in the chats and we'll read what is there and share those a little bit. So whether you have a big family, or if it's just you and your partner, or if you live alone, I think that dinner is one of those places that we can really call in some practices of self-care. I was completely amazed to learn that most American families do not sit down and have dinner together anymore. I grew up in a household where we sat down together and had dinner together every single night. I didn't know anything different. I mean, we could go and we could hang out with our friends, we could, ride our bike, but everybody had to be home at the house for dinner. We all had dinner together every single night. So this idea that people aren't coming together and connecting around the table in a lot of American homes, it was just a little bit foreign to me. I honestly have to say I was living in a little bit of a bubble. I didn't realize that was happening. So maybe that's happening for you and you're connecting with your people around the dinner table at night. Maybe it's not happening for you. Whether you have people that you're connecting with or not, there's still lots of ways that we can bring in this idea of, again, nurturing, right? Because eating and taking in food is a way that we nurture ourselves. And, weaving that together with some real forms of self-care here again. And, it can be little simple things like, how different does it feel? And I have to say that I've been guilty of this in the past. I really try not to anymore. But how different does it feel just talking about pulling something out of the refrigerator and eating something cold while standing in the kitchen and eating it out of the Tupperware or whatever you pulled it out, versus, right, we're not even talking about changing the food here yet, versus maybe heating the food up, perhaps, heating the food up, putting it on a plate, folding a napkin, putting silverware out, lighting a candle or oil lamp on the table, putting on music or not, having conversation. Like, how different does that feel? How different would it feel, and how much more nourishing would it be to turn the television off, to all gather around the table, to have communication, to connect heart to heart, to have some real conversations? And, even if it's not around the food, one of the things that my mom is known for doing is for making specialty cocktails. And I don't mean that with alcohol. Like, she just makes these specialty drinks. And there's something about it that makes you feel so loved that she took the time to do it. Yet it really doesn't take a lot of time. It's that she wanted to do something special for you. And you can do that same thing for yourself. So some of my favorites is I'll just take some fruit if I have something on hand, or even just pull frozen blueberries or strawberries or something out of the freezer, cut them up, put them in the bottom of a glass with or without ice, pour some sparkling water over it. In the summer, I always keep fresh mint in the refrigerator. You put a little sprig of fresh mint, and then all of a sudden you have this like beautiful gift to yourself, something that for me makes me feel loved. So that can be an act of love and self-care that you do for yourself that's really simple, that doesn't even have to do anything with the food, but that you could certainly up the whole game around your meal time by, like I said, lighting a candle. I keep a candle or an oil lamp in the middle of our dining room table all the time, just to remind me to take a moment to do this. It takes just a second to light it. We have a dimmable switch that we turn the lights down a little bit. I have cloth napkins. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. But, we bought ourselves some really lovely plates that we enjoy. That was kind of something that we invested for our family. Not that that's something that you have to do, but just all these ideas of little things that you could do. I grew up in a household where my parents had 2 sets of dishes, right? There were the dishes that we used every day, and then there were the special dishes that only got pulled out like on somebody's birthday or when company was coming. I don't know if you have 2 sets of them. I don't have room for that. So my everyday dishes, they are special. They make me feel special. It's something that we spent the money on, that we spent time looking for something that really spoke to us, that we really loved together. And so every day, whenever we make a meal, we get to put them on these really lovely plates. And for me, that feels very nurturing and nourishing. It's an act of self-care and self-love that I kind of invested in at some point, that I get to enjoy every single time that we sit down to have a meal together. What else do we have around this? So, another idea that I have started incorporating, certainly not on a regular basis, but that I do around like holidays or the solstice or the equinox, or sometimes just with the changing of the seasons, is to do a practice that's called a spirit plate. And that's, you put a lot of love and nourishing, right? Again, there's another step that you can do with your food is, instead of cooking and then multitasking, doing a whole lot of things, focusing on the ways that you would like for your food to nourish you. Putting love into the food, even if it's not complicated, even if I'm just making a quick salad, really using our intention to put love and the idea that this food will nourish us and the people that we care about, even if they're not going to be partaking in the meal. May this meal and the enjoying of this meal nourish us all, right? But back to the spirit plate, there's this idea that before anyone in your home makes their plate, you make a small plate or a small serving that you then go outside and you offer to. The original idea is that you're offering it to the spirits of the land or the spirits of the realm. But, really, truly, whatever your intention behind it could be, it could just be a thank you, like a giving back to the land that grew the food that's nourishing you. You just take just a small amount, a really small amount of even one of the dishes, or a little tiny bit of each of the dishes that you're making, and carry it outside and leave it as a thank you for the land, or as a thank you or a gift to the animals and the other beings that are present, that are also living here with us. And how would that change the energy of your meal? How would that change the idea of making this more of a practice where you connect with the sacredness of this process of nourishing yourself? I think this is something that we could spend kind of a lot of time talking about. And I think that one of the things, is that when we shift our perspective around how we feed ourselves, and how that this is a sacred act of self-care and nourishment, I think that you'll find that that's really going to change the quality and the quantity of foods that you choose as well, right? When you start shifting your perspective around this. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think that's everything that I was going to share around food. So I'm going to pop in here. I saw that a new Q&A popped up, so I want to share that with everyone. So this one says, turn off my phone. Yes, 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 yes. Turn off the phone, right? Especially during meal times. I'm sure all of you are aware of this, but I talked about, standing in the kitchen and eating your food, or multitasking while you're eating, talking on the phone, checking emails, that kind of stuff. And there's so many studies around how that kind of multitasking in that way, or doing lots of things that are distracting, it takes away from your body's ability to properly digest your food. And not only does it affect like how you're digesting your food, now there's all these new studies around the link between your digestive system and your digestive health and your mental health and your mental well-being. So, wow, what an act of self-care to just step outside of doing anything else except for nourishing yourself while you're eating, so that you get that nourishment, so that you can connect in a mindful way with that nourishment that you're receiving through your food, so it can be properly digested, so that you can benefit from the mental health. And really there, we didn't have to change anything. We just turned our phone on silent and we just shifted our perspective, right? We're now dining, something that you do 2, 3 more times a day, every single day of your life, can become an act of self-care. Okay, so what else does it say here? So turn off my phone, do deep breathing before lunch or supper to release stress. Yeah, right? Get grounded and centered. So that's another thing, right? Often we're so distracted when we're eating. It's one of the reasons that we overeat and overindulge. What if we did a little bit of this breath work that we talked about? We brought that in so that we're centered and we're really aware of how we're feeling in our body, and we're only eating as much food or only the types of food that really feel nourishing and supportive. And I'm not trying to say that it has to be this or it has to be that. Chocolate feels really nourishing to me some days. Comfort food, even if it's not the healthiest thing for me, feels really nourishing some days. So I'm using that as kind of an umbrella. It's not about that you always have to, be eating salads or only things that you think of as being healthy food, but it's just about, centering and refocusing your intention. So doing some deep breathing before lunch or supper to release stress, and think or say something positive that happened that morning and that day. Yeah, bringing the gratitude practice into your meals. Beautiful. Yeah. One of the other things that I practice, and I happen to know that a few other people on the call do, so I'll just mention this, but even if you don't practice Reiki, what about sending love to your food, or infusing your water or your beverage with a prayer for yourself, so that you are then taking in that prayer or taking in that added nourishment or taking in that extra love as you're feeding yourself. Again, it could just take a couple of minutes. In Reiki, we would share Reiki with the food so that it raises the vibration of the food and nourishes us on a different level. Again, you don't need to know how to you don't need to know how to do Reiki to do that. What if you just shared some love or shared some gratitude with the source of the food to raise the vibration of the food before you start nourishing yourself with it? Yeah. Okay. I've been talking about food a lot. You can tell I'm very passionate about this subject. I'm going to move on though, so that we get to everything, because it is already 6:47. Time flies. Okay, well, here we go. What do we want to talk about next? Bedtime. Let's definitely get to bedtime. Sleep, so important. We talked about, the rest, reset, and heal, why that's so important to you. While we sleep is one of those times, for some of us, the only time during our day that our body really can move into that rest, reset, and heal stage. So for me, the bedtime routine is really important. Or for bonus points, the nap routine. I'm not a great napper, but boy, whenever I can find the time for it, or slow down enough to enjoy one, they feel very nourishing. They feel like a huge act of self-love and self-care. All right, so bedtime. I won't go into all this since we're short on time. We all know that disrupted sleep can be not very beneficial for our health and our well-being. I'm sure all of you have at least stumbled across one article about how using technology, our phones, watching television right before going to bed can disrupt our sleep cycles. It affects the melatonin and can cause dysregulation within the system. So one of my biggest pieces of advice that I think I mentioned maybe at the beginning is narrowing down the window of when you use technology. So like I said, I think in the morning I wake up and I have started trying to not get on my phone right away. Another thing would be like having kind of a cutoff time at night that, after say 8 o'clock, you don't engage with text that comes through. You're not working on your computer. You're not checking emails, that kind of stuff. Can be an act of self-care in itself. For me, I have this little routine. So after, I brush my teeth, wash my face, put on my pajamas, then I walk past my altar, right? It reminds me for some self-care. And then on my bedside table, I have several things set up. So I'm not good about remembering to take my supplements during the day. So I've got my supplements that I'm taking on the bedside table right next to me. I'll take my supplements, naming what they're for, and naming them in a positive, affirmative way. So, for my wellness, so that, I feel better, for, whatever it is that you're trying to nourish, that positive aspect within your system if you're taking any kind of supplements at the time. I also keep a little salve. It's called a Sweet Dreams salve that I make, but you could use absolutely anything. This is just kind of like a coconut oil salve that's got some essential oils in it. And I give myself a little mini foot massage. I just use a little bit of the salve. You could use an oil or just a little bit of lotion, and just give myself a little mini foot massage. It feels amazing. We've got all of these energy meridians that end in both our hands and our feet. So you could do it to your hands as well, in addition to also. And I just do a little massage, in my hands and my feet before I tuck in under the covers. If that's something that you really like, you could take that just a little bit, like another step further, and you could get yourself one of these little acupressure charts that kind of tells you about the different areas of both. Mine has the hands on one side and the feet on the other. You can also just go online and just print one of them off. They're all over the place. And they make like these little card versions. This is like a little acupressure one that I use whenever I'm doing like one of those little mini facials that we talked about, or when I'm using that Kanza tool on my face, just activating some of those acupressure points. Another little act of self-care there. What else do I do whenever I go to bed? Oh, I keep my chapstick next to the bed. So I hydrate my hands and my feet, do a little foot massage, put on my chapstick. I take my supplements. I'll do my 5 little things that I am grateful for in my little gratitude journal that I keep on my bedside table. And then I dim the lights. Yeah. And then, whatever that next period of time looks like for you. Maybe you want to, again, read a book, something that's inspirational or something that you just enjoy, right? Because that's the real measure of self-care. Does it bring you joy? So it could be about anything. If you're enjoying it, it's bringing joy into your life, perfect. You can read something. Again, you could maybe listen to a podcast. For me, I go to bed a couple hours before I actually go to bed, an hour and a half at least. Again, that's kind of the act of self-care. If I am up and actively in my house, I will be doing things on my computer. I will be thinking about making to-do list. But I have trained myself that once I go to bed, I say good night to all of the people in my house, and then I transition into bed, and all of these kind of self-care things start to come in. Then that's my time to unwind. No more work happens. No more emailing happens. I can let go of all of that stuff and just rest and relax. Whether that's laying in bed sharing Reiki with myself or reading an enjoyable book. Sometimes during that little window of time, my partner and I will watch something on television together, and then transitioning it out of the technology piece and letting yourself move into that rest cycle. Another thing that I do before I go to sleep, once I've kind of done all of those other little things, is I put this little energy bubble around my house, right? Or wrap all of my people in energy or love, give them a little love pat. My daughter's out in Utah. So I send a little love out in her direction, and then send a little self-love to myself, and then off to bed. Yeah. Another thing that you could weave in there, it would be like brewing yourself a cup of, really lovely tea that you took to bed with you, tucked yourself in with a nice cup of sleepy time tea next to you. Another really decadent one that's lovely all times of the year, but especially in the winter, is taking a hot water bottle to bed with you. Whenever I was a kid, you only got a hot water bottle like if you were hurt, if you were injured. But then many years ago, I went to Peru on a retreat that I was on, and it was pretty chilly the time of year that we were there. It was pretty decent during the day, but in the evenings, it was pretty chilly. And none of the little cottages that we were staying in had any kind of heat or any kind of a wood stove. And so the really sweet family that we were staying with in the evenings would make a hot water bottle for each one of us and then go around and tuck the little water bottle in under our bed. So when we would go to bed at night, excuse me, we would go to bed at night, not only was there this nice little warm spot that we got to crawl into, but then we still had this hot water bottle that was still pretty warm that we could lay across our chest or lay on our belly. And there is something so nurturing about it that I adopted it as a practice. And started doing it more regularly, especially on those cold winter nights up here, right? So just taking a little bit of time. I just throw the tea kettle on while I'm brushing my teeth and washing my face, so it doesn't take a lot of extra time. Just fill up the bottle and then take it up to you. That's very nurturing, active self-care, and we're not talking about anything that has to take a lot of extra time out of our day. Okay, great. What else do I need to try to squeeze in here before we run out of time? Shoot. We can't talk about self-care without talking about nature, connecting with nature. Getting outside, being in the fresh air can be really, really lovely. But can we take that a step further and like really make a practice out of it? Yeah, there's lots of ideas. I'm going to throw a bunch of them out at you right now, just so you have those to work with. And it'll be exciting to see which ones you adopt and how you bring these in. One of my favorite is sitting with a tree, doing a little tree meditation, just sitting quietly next to a tree and feeling each other's energy fields. Sometimes it's like we're having a quiet conversation, or I'm sharing information with a really close friend. Just sitting upon the earth, actually, in itself can be a really lovely way to transmute energy and to kind of bring more grounding in. I love, and probably it's because it reminds me of childhood, just laying a blanket out in the yard, or even just laying directly into the grass and staring up at the clouds, trying to find little figures up in the clouds. For me, taking that pause in my day from my to-do list, what I should be doing, and just taking a few moments to do that, to sit with a tree, to lay on the earth, can feel very nurturing and also like an act of self-care. Other things that you can do, stargazing is one that at certain times of the year I really like to do. We don't have indoor plumbing, so I always need to make a little trip outside before I go to bed, and pausing and just gazing at the stars. I mean, not only are we lucky enough to live in a place without a lot of light pollution, that's a real possibility to get to enjoy the stars. I find that it just really shifts my perspective. There's these things shining, reflecting back to me in the sky, and all of these things that I thought were so important all of a sudden seem to like have this perspective of how they really fit in the larger scheme of things. So stargazing, if you haven't played with that, can be a really lovely thing to add into your evening routine. Other things that I do, fire ceremonies. Yeah, so connecting with like a stick, sharing, writing things on paper the way that I talked about before, and then offering them to the fire, the lake, right? We live right next to this big, gorgeous, beautiful lake, and I'm sure all of you already know how healing the lake can be. But taking yourself on a walk during your lunch break and going and sitting by the lake and just listening to the waves, or maybe making a little bit more of a practice out of it, asking a stone for permission to be part of your self-care practice for the day. And really either, if you're working through something that you want to let go, and offering that to the stone and then throwing that into the lake. Or maybe it's a blessing. Maybe it's a blessing or something that you're trying to call into your life, something you want to manifest, and then asking for the power of the lake to help you uplift and manifest that. One of my other favorites that'll be coming up in the season very soon is dandelions, right? The little wishing flower that forms is working with the element of the wind to bring that dandelion wishing flower in and offering love to someone somewhere else in the world, or making a wish or an offering, and then blowing that and watching the wind just carry it away. I find integrating all of those little kinds of things into my daily life brings a lot more meaning. I'm able to stay connected in that sense of mindfulness and sacredness. And for me, that's what self-care looks and feels like for me. What else do I want to talk about here? That's been a lot. I guess maybe we should make some time and space here for any questions that people might have about any of the things I just kind of ran through, trying to get them all squeezed in. Are there any questions that anybody has about anything that I saw a question there, but it looks like it's one that we already addressed. So if you have any questions or comments that you want to pop into the chat or the Q&A, go ahead and do that, as I'll just maybe start kind of wrapping up here a little bit. Maybe do a quick little review of just all the possibilities that are out there. I would say, again, it's not about trying to integrate them all. Don't do that to yourself. This is an area to not be an overachiever. If anything, I would say keep it silly simple, 5-10 minutes a day, something that you can do, right? Because we want to be able to practice this regularly. It's something that we want to be doing on a fairly regular basis. So something small, something simple that you can do 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 4 or more days a week, if you can squeeze it in. That brings in that mindfulness, that helps you shift your perspective, that helps you prioritize your health, your well-being, that brings joy, that feels nourishing, and it can look like anything, right? What's nourishing and what is self-care for someone else might not feel good for you, and I would really encourage you to listen to that. This is your self-care practice. It's not about or for anyone else. So do what makes you happy. Yeah. So yeah, don't overcomplicate it. Try to find balance with the flow of it. Slow down, honor the simple moments, integrate, that mindfulness into things that you're already doing. Like somebody shared, just bring in the lavender washcloth into the shower. We're doing that a couple of times a week at least anyway. And then sharing that, hand on your heart, I love you, and blessing the waters within, like a beautiful self-care ritual or practice for yourself that doesn't take any extra time at all. The other thing that I would say about self-care, and the reason that I feel like it's so important for us, but it's also so important for community, because when we start stepping into these practices of self-care, it acts as an example, but also gives permission to the people around us that we love and that we care about to prioritize themselves and for them to show up for themselves and take good care of themselves. If you have children in the house, I would really say this is so important, right? They're going to model themselves after you. And we see this, right, in positive and maybe not so positive ways already. So take this positive step for yourself to model that, because we can, encourage our kids really early on to make time and space for themselves and to prioritize what they need at any given moment. And there's a lot of joy that I've gotten from watching my kids start to grow into that, for sure. Okay, so short, sweet, simple, a few times a week, maybe doing something a little bit more elaborate on a weekend if you have the time and space and you feel called to, maybe creating things around the cycles of the moons or the seasons or the solstice, the equinox, whatever is resonating with you, ways that you could bring in more of these elements that are maybe just a little bit more than what's achievable on a very regular basis. All right, I think that's it in a nutshell, everyone. There is a couple of things that we didn't get to, but maybe I'll plan on sharing that through my business Facebook page or something else. and kind of sending some more acts of self-care out into the world. I'd love to hear from each of you about pieces of this that you're able to integrate into your life, and maybe even after a month, like how that's feeling and how that's changed and affected how you're feeling throughout the day, or maybe brought some changes in around your eating habits, or how you go about getting ready in the morning, or just how it feels for you through the rest of the day. Well, sending lots of love and good positive energy around these acts of self-care to each of you. I hope that you found something in here that you feel like you can use and integrate easily, so that this can become a regular and daily practice for all of you. All right. Thank you again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care. Be well. I'm just going to check the boxes here. Oh, it's just a little thank you. Yes, thank you too. Good to hear that you took some notes, because maybe something that's not working for you right now at some other time could be the perfect thing for you. All right. Much love to everyone. Take care of yourselves and have a great rest of your evening. Bye. Adria.